snuck off at 5 a.m. with another man. My boyfriend caught us at McDonald's and cut me off. Where do I even begin? My boyfriend was bipolar and was once an OIF veteran, so things were pretty intense at first. I loved him, but connecting with him was a different thing. He had so many mood swings that just came at the most random moments. We could be in the middle of dinner chatting happily one minute, and the next, he's saying he just wants to be left alone, or doesn't feel like talking, or is asking to drop me off at my house, even when I've come fully prepared to spend the night. This went on for about a whole year of our relationship, and it was so hard to deal with. He was taking medications and undergoing treatment, but they were working really slowly. I guess such things take time, but I was really running out of patience. We'd both been married once before, but we divorced our partners because either we or they didn't think we were compatible anymore. And this was before we met each other. So I had a son who lived with me because I seemed like a better parent at the time, and he had a daughter who stayed with her mom for obvious reasons. It's not like his mood swings were always that bad. Sometimes he'd just get super excited and ask me to dress up because we were suddenly going to some fancy restaurant or going for a vacation with my son. I wasn't always the impromptu or jump and go kind of girl, but for someone who was always a witness of her partner's bad mood swings, that always served as some kind of a silver lining for me. And it even got better. Because treatment started going well, he became a better person as a whole, but suddenly it felt like I was the bipolar one. My name is Isabel, and I'm 36 years old. My boyfriend is Ronald, male, 40, and we've been together for about 4 years. I'm originally Spanish, but I went to English schools most of my life and live in the U.S., so my writing shouldn't be that bad. And if it is, I apologize in advance. So like I said before, Ronald and I had our ups and downs due to his disorder and the whole veteran thing, but that barely lasted the first year because of the treatments he was undergoing by the time we'd met. But I really don't know what happened, because I had been waiting so long for us to be stable and be a normal couple, maybe even get married, settle down properly. And just when that started to happen, I started misbehaving. Maybe it's because I felt he'd been the center of our relationship all this while, taking all the attention for himself. Maybe I just wanted to be in control for once, since I finally got the opportunity. But it came with so many insecurities. I was scared that after all we'd been through for the past year, after how long I had waited, someone would try to take him away from me, or he would see that I was really not worth any of his time. So suddenly, purposely, and unintentionally sometimes, I started making everything about me. Ronald had a job, and I didn't. My ex told me I didn't have to work when I gave birth to my son at first. And ever since our divorce, he's been sending money for upkeep, so I really didn't see the need. And then Ronald came along, so that was settled. And I was okay with that, him going out almost every day to make money for us. But then I just became so unsupportive. Like sometimes when he came back from work and started telling me how stressful the day was at work, I'd tell him he was just being such a baby and that the war may have made him forget. But that's what men are meant to do. Work tirelessly to provide for their women. Sometimes I'd snap back and ask if it was as stressful as doing housewife chores and leaving my sick 12-year-old son with a nurse at home. Then he'd apologize and say it wasn't compulsory for me to do the chores and that we could always hire a cleaner, but I'd instantly pick up on that and start accusing him of wanting to get rid of me so that he could bring another woman into the house and sleep with her. I'd cry and say he didn't want me anymore, after all we'd been through together, and all I had to endure because of him. I made it a point to always be the victim, else he'd play the victim card on my behalf. It was more like a controlling mechanism, just something to keep him in check. Or at least it was at first, until it got worse. I started feeling insecure about things I wouldn't even care to know before. If he was out and didn't text, I got super mad about it and accused him of being with another woman. If he went out with old friends and stayed too long, the same thing. We live next to Mexico, and he liked to go on visits there a lot. And he had a couple of veteran friends there. But whenever he visited and didn't return home the same day, I'd accuse him of visiting brothels there, and we'd start another argument which would end with him saying I'd know he wasn't cheating if I ever agreed to go with him. Eventually, he stopped frequenting Mexico, which made me happy, but apparently that still wasn't enough for me. We still argued literally every other day or night because I had a problem with basically everything he did. And there was the gaslighting. I did that a lot, especially when he attempted to complain about how I was treating him. I told him I was treating him as nicely as anyone ever could, and that it was just his paranoia talking. How he put up with this behavior of mine for over 3 years is still a wonder to me, and after going through such, he really deserves all the happiness in the world. One time we broke up, and that was when I met my affair partner, Bruno. And as for how we broke up then, I hated it and complained whenever he had to finish up a task or work on a project with a female coworker. And then one day, he went ahead to buy one of them lunch. My first question was why? Why did he have to get her lunch? He said she didn't have money, and he just happened to have spare, but that even made me angrier. I told him that his condition had made him become a people-pleasing person, and so that's why he bought lunch for the lady. Before then, he had never raised his voice nor his hand to me. Each time I started with my tantrums, he just left the house, and even then, I still feared he was leaving to meet another woman. But I think I may have pushed it too far, or gotten on his nerves so much that one time, because he started yelling at me. I don't want to be specific, but he said really mean things to me. I get that he was provoked, but the way he reacted, I'd never imagined someone, let alone Ronald, would talk to me that way. So I got angry and left the house. And he didn't try to contact me for days. We didn't speak to each other for a week until he finally came to apologize, and we were good again. However, a lot happened that week. Bruno was just a neighbor who'd always had this thing for me, but I was never really interested. Each time I went home, he was always somewhere to be seen. You could say he was that one guy who just had nowhere else to be. And I don't know why I never really thought of what exactly he did for a living. I was always quick to pay for everything and do everything just to show that my actual man was doing his job. And now I regret that. In fact, I regret having met Bruno in the first place, or giving in to him at all. Despite his disorder, Ronald was still way better than him. I had to learn that the hard way, though. The day I fought with Ronald and left the house, I felt so down, because I expected him to stop me from leaving, but he didn't. Bruno was there, and I don't know how it quickly went from me telling him my problems to being at his apartment half of the day. And all in the span of 1 week. And what hurts me the most is that I could have used that time wasted to be with my son and be the mother he always deserved. But I didn't. At the time, I found Bruno charming, but not charming enough to make me leave my man completely because of him. He was fun to chat with, too. And way before the fight, conversations with him made me feel better. And I secretly enjoyed it when he flirted with me, too. Plus, my son adored him. He played football with him sometimes. It was almost like he was an assistant nurse to the one I'd hired. He was a great guy. Bruno made me almost forget completely about the whole Ronald saga. We did fun things together, we had great sex, and it was a good time overall. But then one day, Ronald showed up at the house to apologize with flowers and gifts and a beautiful dress for a romantic dinner date. I was overwhelmed by the gesture, so I forgave him, not that there was really anything to forgive. He even bought gifts for my son, too. It was just all so nice. But I couldn't get rid of Bruno. I wanted to, really, but I just could not. And he didn't want to leave me either, even though he knew I had gotten back with my boyfriend. So we just continued with our affair. But it made me act even more indifferently towards Ronald. I visited him less often and made a big deal of everything. Like, it was worse this time. I was just enjoying Bruno's company more. Plus, we communicated way better. Sometimes we'd just switch from English to Spanish and vice versa, and I felt more connected, because we had the same origins. But with Ronald, it wasn't the same. He could speak Spanish, and would even be considered fluent as a non-native speaker. But it just wasn't the same. I'm not sure how to explain it, but all I can say is that my AP and I just related better. Even at that, I couldn't imagine leaving Ronald. I felt like we had just been through so much together. We were already 3 years into the relationship, and I had everything under control. Plus, 3 years is no joke. But like I said, my AP wasn't ready to let me go, and personally, I didn't want to lose him either, so I decided to keep both men to myself. I'm not sure now whether Ronald suspected anything or not, because he was actually making deliberate efforts not to get on my nerves, or do anything that would make me misunderstand his intentions. Yet I still found a way to complain. But it all came crashing that morning. Bruno and I had made it a routine to go out at least once a day so we could have alone time. But because of my relationship, we were scared of daytime outings. So 5 a.m. at McDonald's or just a random road trip soon became a routine. and I didn't have to worry about my son because on nights like that, his nurse stayed over. I knew that Ronald frequented the gym every morning, but I just didn't know he did it at such an early hour of the morning. Bruno didn't have a car, so he drove mine while I sat in the passenger seat. We were just driving around McDonald's when I sighted a car that looked like Ronald's. My heart immediately sank. I tried convincing myself that it couldn't be him, but I think deep down I knew that there were more chances of it being him than not. He must have taken note of my car because he slowed down a bit when driving past us, and he clearly tried to peer into the car. I'm sure he saw us even though I tried to duck and hide. After he drove past us a bit, I told Bruno to quickly turn the car around, but by then, Ronald was already calling my phone. I was so freaked out that I don't know when I dropped the cell on Bruno. He picked up but didn't hear anything on the other end. We tried to drive away, but he kept following behind. Finally, Bruno found a turn that he made faster than Ronald could, and so he stopped following behind. I was so scared at first. And we didn't head straight home that morning, afraid that Ronald would get there before us, or just find a way to catch us red-handed if we did. Bruno kept reassuring me that he may not have spotted us, and maybe it was just a coincidence that he called me at that same time. Still, I wasn't taking any chances. Ronald may have been bipolar, but he was not stupid, nor ignorant. While we were still in the car, I got a text from him bluntly saying he saw me. Of course, I fought that to the last. It wasn't the first time he'd caught me red-handed doing something, and I denied. It used to happen all the time, and every time he'd just let me take the win. So yes, in hope of that, I told him I was home, and that I'd borrowed my car to a particular friend of mine and her husband because they needed it. But I may have forgotten that my car had unmistakable damage on the driver's side. He reminded me of that and said he was certain that was my car he saw, and that I was with another man in the car. I told him that he must have been mistaken. Maybe it was my friend and her husband in the car or something. He then reminded me again that my friend couldn't have left her perfectly good car to borrow mine when my stickers were even expired. I told him that there must have been some kind of misunderstanding because I was home, taking care of my son since the nurse didn't come. He busted me on that too. Apparently, he had passed by my house after Bruno and I managed to escape, and he saw my son's nurse's car parked outside. My brain wasn't functioning very well anymore, and so I started saying the most stupid and idiotic things. So Ronald is a teetotaler. As in, he doesn't take any type of alcohol, like at all. And I, of all people, knew that. Yet I told him that he must have been drinking. Maybe somehow his veteran friends had influenced him, and he was under the influence that minute. I also said it could be drugs that were making him act like that because he knew I'd never ever go out with another man, let alone at that hour of the day. He reminded me that he didn't take any alcohol or do drugs ever, and that I knew that. Then I switched to saying he must have gotten into a fight with a coworker at the office and decided to take it out on me. I started playing the whole victim card thing again. But that didn't seem to be working. I kept jumping from one excuse to the other. At some point, I told him that his head must have been messed up from the war, and that's why he was acting up like that. I even tried to blame the whole thing on the language barrier, something we barely had because I could speak English okay, and he wasn't a bad Spanish speaker himself. In the end, it was just me trying to make him feel delusional about what he saw and knew, and when he wasn't buying any of it, I started telling him it was his fault because sometimes when we were out, his ex-wife would call him and he'd talk to his daughter for about half an hour sometimes. And I even accused him of cheating on me with his ex whenever he went to visit. I just kept saying a bunch of different stuff to put the blame on him. And I didn't realize it then, but now I know I was just being silly. And he didn't even care about whatever I was saying. When I was done, he gave me till the end of the day to go pack my things from his house, and he blocked me instantly. But when I finally got home, the nurse's car was gone, and so was she and my son. And only then did I notice that I had several missed calls from her. I called back and turned out my baby had a seizure, a more serious one than the norms we were used to. And not only that, the nurse called his father when she couldn't get through to me. So by the time Bruno and I arrived at the hospital, Ben was there already, and he gave me the scolding of my life. First, he asked where I'd gone at that time of the day, but once he looked over at Bruno, I'm sure he figured it out, because he started ranting about how irresponsible I was as a mother, and that he would seek custody for our son. I didn't want my boy away from me, but at the same time, I knew Ben was right about everything. So he filed for custody, and he got that almost immediately because it was a near-death situation. Now my son was gone, and I had no income coming from my ex anymore. And as for Ronald, the incident with my son made me have to postpone my reconciliation plans because, yes, I was hoping we'd put the past behind us. A few days later, I went to his house and my stuff was no longer there. He saw me go in and didn't even bother speaking to me. I came back downstairs yelling at him when I couldn't find my things. He waited for me to finish with my ranting before he said he donated the stuff to the orphanage without even sparing me a glance. I let all hell loose that day. I kept scolding and saying he was maltreating me after all I'd done for him, and he suddenly wanted to leave me for another woman just because he got paranoid, and he didn't even respect my things. But he didn't say anything to me, didn't even try to defend himself or explain anything. I hated the fact that he was ignoring me like that, so I just started throwing things around the house. Next minute, he just got up and carried me off of my feet and out of his house. My struggles didn't get me anywhere. He kicked me out, and a few days later, I received a restraining order. But he didn't have to go that far. I'm not a psycho. But I almost lashed out like one when I discovered he had cut me off everywhere. It started with my gym membership. I went to the gym on a very good morning to just relax my nerves after going through so much some days prior. But my card wouldn't work. It was so embarrassing that the receptionist had to inform me that my membership had been canceled online. Like, what the hell? He could have at least given me a heads up instead of letting me embarrass myself like that. But he didn't stop there. There was this eyebrow app I'd been so excited about for so long. And he knew that, but he decided to cancel the appointment. As if that wasn't enough, I had a credit card that he used to pay on. It just had my name on it, but every other thing was his. Well, since he'd left me and Bruno was still around, I took Bruno and my son out for dinner once when Ben let me spend the day with him. We went to Papa Dueck's and got a big dinner worth around $250. I tried using the card, but it declined. Apparently someone had locked it. And that's not even the worst part of that day. When I asked Bruno to pay, he didn't have a dime. Just another embarrassing situation. I had to call my ex-husband and ask for assistance, and I'm quite sure the only reason he agreed to pay the bill was because our son partook in the dinner. Even at that, he was only paying around $100 for free. And the balance was considered a loan on my part. The worst part of the whole situation is that I ended up with a loser with no job. How can a man not have a job at all? My son is not even with me anymore, so I can't feed on this monthly keep. I know how shameless that may sound right now, but these are desperate times. I myself have no job, and the past 2 weeks I've been surviving on the money my sister and mom have been sending in. But I know that sooner or later they'd get tired too. Meanwhile, I don't know where to dig out $150 to repay Ben at the moment. I can't even get to Ronald because he's blocked me, and there's still that restraining order thing. At this point, I could say my life has come to an end, literally.